I remember that day so vividly, like it was yesterday. It's a memory I can't shake, and sometimes it feels like it's etched in my mind with permanent ink. My daughter, Allison, was 17, and she was everything to me. She was the type of girl who planned everything meticulously, the kind of person who'd make sure her phone was charged, even when it was still at 72%. So you can imagine my surprise when I got that notification. I was folding laundry, and I heard that soft ping from my phone. At first, I thought it was just another one of those mundane alerts, the ones that tell you your kid completed some goal or something. But this was different. It was a low battery alert from Allison's emergency smartwatch. That wasn't normal for her. It was the first sign that something was wrong. I tried calling her immediately, but each time it went straight to voicemail. My heart started pounding faster with each failed attempt. By the fourth call, my hands were sweating and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Allison was on a weekend trip with my parents and my sister Claire. They'd wanted to take the kids hiking in Arizona, a simple family getaway. Claire's kids, Mason and Chloe, were with them too. Allison was the oldest, and she was hesitant at first. She didn't have the best relationship with my side of the family, but Claire had sent her a text, asking to start fresh, just the kids and them. My mom had echoed the sentiment, saying they wanted to get to know her better, and that maybe I could use a break. I almost said no, but when Allison looked at me and said, "What if they actually mean it this time?" I found myself agreeing. Now, sitting there with my heart in my throat, I couldn't reach her, and her watch was dying. I started lying to myself, telling myself all sorts of things to keep the panic at bay. Maybe there was no service. Maybe they were out of range. Maybe she dropped the watch and it was just sitting in the car somewhere. But that didn't stop the dread from creeping in. I opened the GPS map, and that's when I felt the temperature drop. The dot that showed Allison's last known location was far from any road, town, or anything recognizable. It was a hiking trail deep in the desert, miles off the highway, surrounded by nothing but red sand, jagged rocks, and an unbearable heat. It was 115 degrees, and it was only noon. I called my mom next. She picked up on the second ring, almost like she was expecting it. Her voice was casual, too casual, as she said Allison had wandered off a little. "Got upset and needed space," she said. Claire was on speaker, chiming in, saying Allison was just being dramatic. I didn't say a word. Not a single one. If I had kept listening, I would have said something terrible, something I couldn't take back. I couldn't waste time on a fight. I had to act. I opened my laptop and booked the earliest flight I could find to Flagstaff. My hands were shaking, but my mind was crystal clear. It was a panic that brought clarity, a focus I hadn't felt in years. I thought of Allison, seeing her in my mind with her sun hat, her camera bag, her sunscreen. I had helped her pack just 2 days prior. I made her promise to stay hydrated. She rolled her eyes, but I hugged her twice, told her I loved her 3 times, thinking foolishly that it would keep her safe. When I landed, Louise was waiting for me. We hadn't spoken in years, but I knew he was the one I needed. Once upon a time, we'd hiked the canyons together. He was a wilderness survival instructor back then. I was just a mom on the edge. He didn't ask why I called, just asked where to meet. He had extra water, an old hiking map, and a med kit ready. We reached the trailhead just before sunset, and it was eerily quiet. No cars, no other hikers. Just us and the desert, stood there, stunned, trying to process what Grandma Rose had just said. Half of everything to Allison. It felt like a validation, like finally someone in the family recognized the brilliance that I saw in her every day. But there was also a heaviness in my chest. I knew this would cause a storm. Not because of the money itself, but because of what it symbolized. It was a statement, a declaration that Allison was different, special, worthy of being seen. I thanked Grandma Rose, not with words, but with a nod that I hoped conveyed my gratitude. She simply patted my hand and changed the subject to something mundane, as if she hadn't just dropped a bombshell in the middle of her living room. I left her house feeling a mix of emotions: pride for Allison, fear for how the rest of the family would react, and a lingering sadness that it had taken this long for someone to truly see her. I kept the news to myself, knowing that it wasn't my place to share. It was Grandma Rose's decision, and she would reveal it when she was ready, but it was hard to keep it in, especially around Claire. I could already hear her voice in my head, the hurt and anger that would spill out when she found out. Claire always felt entitled to more, to everything, simply because she was Claire. And for once, she wouldn't be the center in someone's story. The weeks went by in a blur. I tried to focus on work, on Allison, on anything but the ticking time bomb that was my family. Then, the day came. Grandma Rose called a family meeting, something she hadn't done in years. We all gathered in her living room, the air thick with unspoken tension. Grandma Rose was calm, almost serene, as she told everyone about her decision. Claire's face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. It was a silent explosion, one that sucked the air out of the room. She didn't say a word, just stood up and left. The rest of us sat there, stunned, unsure of what to do next. Grandma Rose continued as if nothing had happened, asking who wanted more tea. I expected Claire to call me the next day, to yell or accuse or cry. But she didn't. Instead, she didn't speak to me at all. It was as if I had become invisible, erased from her life. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. I missed my sister, as flawed and self-centered as she could be. But more than that, I feared what this rift would mean for Allison. Growing up in a family that thrived on polite cruelty, I had learned to navigate the subtle barbs and silent judgments. But Allison was different. She was sharp and observant, yes, but she was also vulnerable in a way that I had never been allowed to be. I worried about what this would do to her. Would it make her stronger, or would it break something inside her that I would never be able to fix? I found myself replaying conversations in my head, wondering if there was something I could have said or done differently. But deep down, I knew this was out of my hands. The only thing I could do was be there for Allison, to support her in whatever way she needed. And so I waited. I waited for Claire to come around, for the family to settle into this new reality. But as the days turned into weeks, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. The family I had known, with all its flaws and complexities, had shifted irrevocably. The only thing that remained constant was my love for Allison, fierce and unwavering. And in the end, that had to be enough. I hadn't asked for this. Neither had Allison, but I knew what this would mean, and I knew it was going to burn something down. Claire found out 4 days later. Don't ask me how. My family leaks faster than a screen door in a hurricane. She called me the moment I picked up. She was already screaming. That's just how it is with her. Emotion first, logic later. "Are you kidding me?" she shouted. "That's 3 kids against 1. Are you seriously okay with this?" I could hear the disbelief in her voice, the anger boiling over. "I didn't write the will," I said. "Rose did." "Well, you certainly didn't try to stop her." She hung up on me. It was just like that, a cold disconnect, leaving me with the static of the line and my own thoughts. An hour later, my mother called. "You know Claire's struggling right now. Her job, the kids, her marriage, everything's a mess." "I'm not in charge of her marriage," I said flatly, feeling the weight of her words pressing down. "She's just scared that your daughter is manipulating Rose." That word, manipulating. It struck a nerve. Allison, who has spent her whole life scanning people's expressions for what they're not saying. Allison, who says things like, "It's fine," when she's clearly not fine, just to avoid making people uncomfortable. Manipulative. That's rich, I thought. After that, it got colder. Quietly, of course. The kind of cold that seeps in through the cracks, unnoticed until it's too late. Allison was left out of group chats. One of Claire's kids had a birthday. Everyone posted photos except Allison wasn't in any of them, even though she was there. She came home that day and said, "Do you think they hate me?" I said, "No," I lied. Then came the sudden invitation. "Let's take the kids out to Arizona," my mom said on the phone. A little bonding trip, no pressure, just Claire, the cousins, us, and Allison. It felt like an olive branch, but I couldn't help but wonder why now. "She's family. We should all try," Mom said. It sounded reasonable enough, but something felt off. Claire sent Allison a follow-up text. "Let's start fresh for real this time." Allison stared at her phone for a long time, the screen illuminating her face in the dim light. Then she said, "What if this time is different?" I wanted to believe it too, I really did. So I helped her pack, making sure she had everything she needed. I made her triple check her charger, her SPF, her backup snacks, and gave her the lecture about hydration. She rolled her eyes the way teenagers do, but I couldn't help myself. "You act like I'm hiking through Death Valley alone," she said. I didn't laugh. Before she left, I hugged her twice, told her I loved her 3 times. She rolled her eyes again, but she smiled a little too. Then she was gone, the door closing softly behind her. According to her, it happened on the 3rd day. They were hiking a dry ridge somewhere west of Flagstaff. Claire said, "Go take some pictures by the rocks up ahead. We'll wait here." So she did. She walked ahead, camera in hand, excited, trusting. She said she turned around 10 minutes later and the car was gone. At first, she thought maybe they'd driven around to meet her on the other side. Then she realized her bag was missing. Not her day bag, the one with just her phone, watch, and water. Her main bag, the one with her backup charger, her emergency GPS pin, her second water bottle, her map, her trail mix, her ID, gone. She waited 2 hours before she stopped waiting. Then she wrote a note, slipped it in her sock just in case. "My name is Allison. My family left me. My mom's number is in my camera bag. Please call her." That's what she told me at the hospital. But in that moment, on the rock, her body limp in my arms, she said something else first. "They took my bag on purpose, and I knew it wasn't just neglect. It wasn't just them being careless or cruel. It was a plan. A quiet, cruel, premeditated plan. Because if something happened to Allison, they thought the will would change. They thought it would go to Claire's kids instead. They thought they could make it look like an accident, like she wandered, got lost, couldn't handle the heat. They underestimated her. They always have. And me. They forgot who raised her. I didn't scream. I didn't even call them, but I did open a folder on my phone, the one labeled just in case, because I'd been collecting receipts for longer than they realized. There's something sickening about watching your child sleep in a hospital bed, even when she's stable, even when the nurse says she's going to be okay. Because all I could think standing there with a cup of vending machine coffee and sand still stuck to my boots was how close we'd come to losing her, and how much closer they were to losing everything. How did it come to this? I still can't shake the feeling of dread that washed over me when I got that call. It was like time stopped, and all I could think about was how close I came to losing Allison. The calmness in their voices on the phone was chilling. They told me she was at the hospital, suffering from heat exhaustion and dehydration. Not enough to be fatal, they said, but the way the doctor described it, another couple of hours could have been critical. Her kidneys were struggling, and her heart was showing signs of distress. It was terrifying to think how fragile the situation was. Louise was there in the hallway with me as they administered fluids through her IV. He didn't say much, just handed me a bottle of water, his expression asking all the unspoken questions. I knew what he was thinking. They left her. He nodded in agreement, understanding the gravity of the situation without needing words. They took her bag, I told him, and he just kept nodding. They wanted to make it seem like a misunderstanding, a mix-up, but I knew better. Louise asked me if I wanted to handle this quietly or loudly. I said I'd start quiet, and that's when everything started unfolding. I gathered everything I could, photos, texts, voicemails. Allison, being the meticulous vlogger she is, had her camera with her, tucked safely under a rock ledge. She films everything. She's 17 and loves to document her life. I found a clip on her camera where Claire told her to go check out a ridge for some good shots. The video was shaky, but Claire's voice was unmistakable. "Just go get some shots, we'll wait here." Allison had agreed, not knowing what was coming. 10 minutes later, the camera was still recording when she turned around, bewildered, whispering, "Where did they go?" That moment was captured forever. I made sure the footage was safe, uploading it, saving it to multiple drives and printing screenshots. I also pulled the GPS data from her smartwatch. It painted a haunting picture. Her walking, pausing, retracing her steps, circling, sitting still, and then nothing for 2 hours. It was as if time stood still until finally I saw my own icon arriving on the map, a digital lifeline in that moment of despair. I didn't tell anyone in the family. No texts, no calls. Instead, I reached out to Grandma Rose's attorney, Benson. He was the kind of man who once sent me a handwritten apology for spilling wine on my coat. He handled all of Rose's affairs, and I trusted him. I emailed him with the subject line "urgent" regarding the Arizona incident. I attached everything: the video, GPS log, hospital intake form, even a copy of Claire's text inviting Allison to the trip. No commentary, just the facts. Benson replied within the hour, wanting to meet with Rose the next day. The next call I made was to the local sheriff's department near Flagstaff. I didn't dial 911. This wasn't a frantic emergency call. I needed to be calm, composed, and clear. I asked for the detective handling missing persons and trail incidents. I laid everything out in short, clipped sentences. They didn't report her missing. Yes, they left the area after she vanished. No, they didn't return to look for her. Yes, I believe they knew she was left behind. And yes, I could prove it. Detective Moreno listened patiently, not interrupting once, then asked if I could come in. I explained I was out of state but willing to upload everything and file a sworn affidavit. There was a long pause before he finally said he'd send me a secure link to upload the evidence, cautioning me not to send it over email. When I went back into Allison's hospital room, she was awake, but barely. Her eyes were tired, but there was a flicker of something when she asked if they were coming. I sat beside her, reassuring her they wouldn't be coming unless it was in handcuffs. She managed a small smile despite everything. The next day, she was more herself, her voice and sarcasm returning. She even joked with the nurse about whether IV fluids counted towards her hydration goals. It was good to see her like that, to hear her voice steady and sure. But then she said something that broke my heart all over again. She said she didn't think they ever meant to bring her home. I couldn't deny it. I just listened as she pieced together the events. How Claire had taken her emergency bag out of the car by mistake when they stopped for gas. How Claire insisted she keep her phone off to charge it faster. How her cousins were told a story about her meeting a friend and being picked up later. It was all planned, scripted. I asked if she wanted to continue, but she just looked at me, and I knew she needed a break. So we sat there in silence, both knowing that the road ahead was going to be long and complicated. I remember that afternoon vividly. It started with a message from Benson. It was titled, "Re-Arizona Incident," and it contained everything I needed to know. I had already reported what happened, and now Rose had confirmed it all. Benson's message was a warning. Things were going to escalate, and I needed to be ready. Then another message came, this time from Detective Moreno. It was about formal charges: reckless endangerment of a minor, child neglect, failure to report a missing person. They were going to contact the people involved directly. Despite all this, I didn't reach out to my parents or Claire. Not because I feared their reactions. I already knew what they would say. Claire would call it a misunderstanding, claiming Allison left in a fit and they waited for her. Mom would accuse me of overreacting. Dad would remain silent, then send me some article about family reconciliation without a word of explanation. I was done with their lies. I wanted the truth to be out before they had a chance to twist it. I didn't make anything public, but I updated my emergency file, the one Rose once mockingly referred to as the family fallout binder. I added a new section called Desert. Inside, there were copies of everything I'd sent to Benson and the sheriff, Allison's statement, her hospital discharge papers, and a sentence in my own handwriting. They left her on purpose because she was in the way. The next time I'd see my parents, they wouldn't be alone, and they wouldn't be smiling. There's a particular kind of silence that hangs over a family when everyone is on edge, waiting to see who will break first. That silence enveloped me when I arrived at my grandmother's estate that Sunday afternoon. The brunch was already underway when Allison and I got there. The table was crowded. Claire was at the far end, acting overly composed. My parents were pretending to focus on buttering biscuits, as if they hadn't left my daughter to fend for herself in the desert. Grandma Rose was by the fireplace, her cane in one hand, a stack of papers in the other. The clinking of silverware was audible, but no one was really eating. Everyone knew what this gathering was about, but they had no idea just how bad it would get. We sat at one end of the table. There were no hugs exchanged, no smiles. Allison mirrored my demeanor. Claire offered a forced grin, the kind you give at a funeral you didn't plan. She leaned over and asked if we could talk later. I refused. Then Grandma Rose cleared her throat, and the room fell silent. At 90-something, she had that effect. She looked at each of us as if assessing our worth, then began to speak about her estate. The tension was palpable. Claire's face was strained. My mom straightened up. My dad stopped chewing. Allison, to her credit, didn't flinch. Grandma Rose continued expressing her deep disappointment in some of us, accusing us of trying to harm what she loved to preserve what we thought we were owed. Claire's expression was one of shock and anger. My mom put a hand on her wrist, a silent warning not to make things worse. Rose lifted the papers, announcing that her estate would now be inherited by a single person. The room went still. My dad whispered that this was madness. My mom looked like she'd swallowed something sharp. Claire couldn't hold back any longer. She lashed out, accusing Rose of manipulation, claiming Allison was unstable and seeking attention. I reminded her that Allison nearly died. Claire shot back, accusing me of orchestrating it all for sympathy. I confronted her about leaving Allison in the desert. She tried to excuse it, saying she hadn't expected Allison to accept the invitation. That admission stopped everyone cold. Grandma Rose turned to Claire, her voice icy, asking if she was admitting to lying to Allison. Claire's mouth opened, then closed. She tried to speak again, but nothing came out. I remember sitting in that room, the tension so thick you could almost touch it. My mom, she couldn't even look me in the eye, just stared off into the distance like she was trying to find an escape. My dad was doing his best to avoid the moment, taking long, deliberate sips of water. Maybe he thought he could just drown out the reality of what was happening. And Rose, she was the one who stepped forward, the one who had finally had enough. She'd gone through all the evidence, talked with her lawyer, and decided to press charges. When she said it, I watched Claire's face just fall apart. She couldn't believe it. "What?" she managed to get out. Rose was calm, almost too calm, and told her that the sheriff would be in touch soon, maybe even the next day. My mom snapped, tried to remind Rose that Claire was her granddaughter, but Rose, she just looked at my mom like she was something she couldn't quite understand. She mentioned Allison, my daughter, and how she was more connected to Rose than any of us. In that moment, it felt like the room could have burst into flames, and none of us would have done anything about it. Claire, predictably, couldn't handle it. She stood up and started yelling, accusing Rose of always hating her, of always wanting Rosabella to come out on top. Rose just raised an eyebrow like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. It was like Claire couldn't see the real issue, couldn't see that this wasn't about Rosabella at all. Then Claire turned to me, looking for someone to blame. She thought I'd orchestrated all of this, but I just smiled for the first time that day. I told her no. She did this herself. I just made sure people knew the truth. The week after that was a whirlwind. Formal charges were filed for reckless endangerment of a minor, neglect, failure to report a missing person, attempted fraud, and interfering with an inheritance. My parents got themselves a lawyer. Claire went out and hired a publicist. Our family group chat went silent. The usual invite for Christmas? Quietly canceled. And Allison, she got a letter from Claire, handwritten, saying she didn't mean for things to go so far, pleading with her not to tear the family apart over this. But Allison, she didn't respond. She just folded the letter in half and fed it into the shredder, like that was the only answer it deserved. People love to say family is everything, but they leave out the part where not all family is good. Some people, they just happen to share your blood, and sometimes the best thing you can give them is distance. The last time I saw my mother, it was in a parking lot outside a grocery store. She tried to talk to me, asking if I really wanted to destroy everything over a misunderstanding. I just looked at her and said, "She left my daughter in the desert." She blinked like she couldn't process it and then said, "Well, she's fine now, isn't she?" I didn't bother replying. I just turned around and walked away. A few months down the line, Allison decided to start therapy. Not because I pushed her into it, but because she felt she needed it. She told me she needed a space where she didn't have to protect me. I thought that was fair. She's still the same Allison, quiet, sharp, with that sarcastic edge. But now, sometimes, I catch her laughing at videos again, or sleeping with her door open. She leaves cups on the counter like she knows she's safe here. We don't do family holidays anymore. Instead, we go hiking together. We overpack, carrying too much water, too many backup chargers, and Allison always brings a whistle. She blows it just to annoy me, and I let her because every time she does, it's a reminder that she's still here. They wanted her gone, but now they've disappeared. 9 months later, we found ourselves back in Arizona, but not for a hike. This time it was for the trial. The charges against my parents and Claire were severe: reckless endangerment of a minor, neglect, failure to report a missing person, conspiracy to interfere with a legal trust, and even attempted manslaughter. When the full story came to light, with the missing bag, the drained watch, and the rising temperatures, there were no misunderstandings left to hide behind. Allison took the stand, calm and composed, and said she didn't think they cared if she made it out. She believed they hoped she wouldn't. I gave my statement too, sticking to the facts, keeping it brief and controlled. The sentencing was harsh. Claire got 9 years, no parole for the first 5. My parents got 6 years each. The judge made it clear this wasn't just neglect. It was a calculated act of abandonment with financial motives. If not for Allison's resilience and my quick action, this could have been a homicide case. We left the courtroom and stepped into the daylight. Allison took a deep breath but didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Some victories are loud and some are quiet. This one was permanent. So here I am asking you, did I go too far or not nearly far enough? Let me know what you think. And if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe. Because sometimes justice really does get served, and sometimes it's personal.